Well, I'd like to make a very warm welcome to everybody that's here tonight, both our readers and the guests that have come along to enjoy these wonderful authors' work. My name is Claire Hibbs-Cusson. I'm a very happy senior student at Central Connecticut State University, and I'm just honored to be here to be your MC for the evening. You probably already know, each person has 5 minutes to read something from their work that's in the anthology. We're very excited to hear what you have to share with us tonight. Just a little, there's some bottled water over there if anybody needs to wet their whistle. So without further ado, we'll get started. The first reader for this evening is Anthony Dieres. He's the author of The Language of Men, a memoir, which received the Penn Discovery Prize and Forward's Memoir of the Year. His work has appeared in several literary publications. He currently directs the Low Residency MFA in Creative and Professional Writing at Western Connecticut State University. Anthony?
Thank you all so much. This is the first live reading I've done in 2 years, so it's good to know that it's still possible. I just want to thank everybody at the Connecticut Literary Festival for organizing this and for including me in the anthology. I'm just going to read a very short excerpt from the beginning of a short story called Dream Police. Laura found the place, made the call, and scheduled the pickup. Like we were to leave Michelle in a bag at the end of our driveway. The woman on the phone told Laura she was doing the right thing. Laura told me we were doing the right thing. I'm still not sure. I was on a flight to New York when they came for her. The agency had called some last-minute urgent meeting, the only kind they ever call, so I had to be there. A few nights before, Michelle had come home drunk. Drunk is not the right word. Too cutesy, too much room for fun. Puking didn't even faze her. She sat up, opened her mouth, and everything inside poured down her shirt. No convulsing, no sound. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was barely breathing, her skin the color of bone. When we brought her home, she made jokes in the car and sipped orange Gatorade, the hospital bracelet sliding up close to her elbow. Laura yelled at her. She yelled in the car, in the driveway, through the kitchen, up the stairs, and continued to yell after Michelle slammed and locked her door. When Laura came back down, she was sweaty, her face flushed, like she'd just gone on a long run, but there wasn't that gentleness, that peace in her eyes. How can you just sit there, she wanted to know, after what she did? I put my bowl of grapes on the coffee table. We just got home. She's alive. That's the most important thing. Give her some time. Laura walked into the other room. I reached for a grape but thought better of it and listened to her rustle through some papers until she came back in and handed me a business card with sharp corners. At the bottom, a small logo, 2 hands cupping a sapling. Hillock Academy, I asked. Laura nodded. Rebecca gave it to me at our last session. They take care of everything. Insurance will cover it. Well, some of it anyway. My fingers curled around the card. But what do? They help, Don. They help parents who don't know what the fuck to do. They help kids. She tried again. They help kids before it's too late. Before it's too late. I'd hear that phrase from social workers, counselors, every staff member at Hillock Academy. I'd read it in brochure after brochure, testimonials from parents just like us. But hearing Laura say it for the first time was like watching an actress audition for a role she didn't want. Thanks.
Very nice, Anthony. And you did a wonderful job reading for someone who hasn't done it in 2 years. So thank you very much. All right. Next on our agenda is Victoria Nordland. Victoria is the creative writing director at Rockville High School in Vernon, Connecticut, an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut, and a lead master teaching artist at the Mark Twain House. Her poetry collections include Wine Dark Sea, and binge-watching Winter on mute. A Best of the Net and Pushcart Prize nominee, her work has appeared in a number of literary journals. Victoria, welcome.
Hello, I'm honored to be here. My poem is called Rituals. I wake up at 5:05 a.m. to pick my poodle's eyes open, lift her off the couch to pee outside. It is 12 degrees and she eats the snow. It must feel good in her old throat. I stand without socks at the sliding door, guiding her up an astroturfed ramp. She eats 4 tins of Caesar beef recipe dog food and waits to be carried down to my mom's green pull-out couch in the basement. I cover her with a teal comforter, tell her to have a good day at work. She no longer asks to be petted, but I do this part anyway. I go upstairs to have my K-cup coffee, pour my Starbucks caramel creamer into the glass mug everyone knows not to take, drink it in the dark at the kitchen table. My mom's birthday is next week. For a few years after she died, I went to the paper store and stood for way too long in the card aisle, selecting the right one. I used to call her every morning at 6:15 on my commute. I have her flip phone in my purse. Her pocketbook is next to my nightstand. She would have been 92. I have the peppermint oil I bought her in bulk on Amazon the day before she died. Apply it to my wrists now and then. We would go to Burton's for a birthday martini. She liked hers dirty, relished the olives. We would sit at the round table by the front. I would help her walk, then walker, then wheelchair over to Chico's to buy some black blouses. The same sales lady would greet us and ask how we were doing, and I wonder if she is still there. It is still dark when I start my car. Clear just enough frost off to make it until the heat kicks in. I always come back to the same playlist now. Continuum timed perfectly for each traffic light. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Okay, very nice. Next up is Dr. Ralph Mama, a best-selling author and an award-winning storyteller. Dr. Mama is the only one in the world today who tells English, French, Bon, and Yoruba folktales from his native Benin and other parts of the world. He is a distinguished professor of English and a CSU professor at Eastern Connecticut State University. Dr. Mama.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The Good Samaritan. Karima got to Kadia shortly before 7 as the little town awoke from sleep and the sights and sounds of human activity gradually re-established their dominion everywhere. Here, a woman carrying an enormous basket overflowing with loaves of bread hawked her goods with a voice sweet as music. Hot bread for sale, folks! Crunchy, tasty bread for sale! A little further away, a man riding an old rickety bicycle waved to a pedestrian in greeting. On either side of the street, people hurried by. Footsore and travel-stained, Karima sat on an old wooden bench next to a convenience store to rest and figure out what to do next. She thought back to her friend, Adiza, whose high-pitched voice and quiet humor she suddenly missed even more than she had as she took her first steps into the starlit night, homeless and forlorn, on her flight into the unknown long ago. She thought of Papa, of what he must have felt and said and done when he'd awakened to find her gone. She imagined what must have been his frenzied search alongside Mama Fitar and the incredulous neighbors through bushes, side streets, and sheds. Adiza would have been among the searchers, Karima decided. And in her mind's eye, she could see her dumbstruck and robbed of the power of motion a moment upon hearing the news, then joining the search as she channeled her sorrow and her anger into action. Karima wasn't sure she would ever see any of them again, nor was she sure of what she would say to them if she did. Still, she chuckled at the thought of encountering them as she was, hair cropped short, no earrings, wearing tight-fitting blue jeans and a bottle green shirt Papa had long ago discarded, and taking off her disguise as a boy to reveal her identity to them. She could imagine the expression of shock and bewilderment on Fitar's goofy face. It was then that Karima caught sight of the man. Of noble bearing, he was robed in white and slung over his shoulders. And slung over his shoulder was a brightly colored bag made of synthetic material. His bushy beard was flecked with silver. The man looked left and then right as he waited at an intersection. Then he fired a glance toward Karima, or so she thought, before crossing. A shiver ran down her spine. Instinctively, she averted her gaze, though she didn't want to. She wanted to watch this man, wanted to see where he was going. In fact, she needed to. When she looked again, the man had disappeared. It wasn't like she'd seen him before. He's been a total stranger. Even then, she found herself springing to her feet as if her body had been programmed to do it from afar. Karima looked up and down the street, the tree-lined street, frowning in concentration. Then she snatched up her bag and hurried past a fat little boy who stood and stared after her a moment before going back to sweeping the dry and dusty patch of ground in front of his father's barber shop. As Karima rushed helter-skelter along the street in pursuit of a total stranger to whom she felt a strange connection, a stranger who seemed to be playing cat and mouse with her, a voice spoke to her and said, "Find that man at all costs. He will be to you a better father than you have ever known."
Wonderful, thank you. Right, who is next? Our next reader, Christine Caliphas. Christine's award-winning manuscript, Blueprint for Daylight, was excerpted in Connecticut's Emerging Writers. Essays have appeared in Long Reads, Page, and the Woven Tale Press. Her poem Horses was the recipient of the Nightville Poetry Award and was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Christine is an instructor at Westport Writers Workshop and facilitator at the Quiet Corner chapter of the Connecticut Poetry Society. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. So I have bifocals for the first time. I'm still getting used to them. Okay. Look inside a woman for the world. When Connecticut shuts down, so does my uterus. Ah, you have pandemic period, my OBGYN says. I think about punctuation while her hand is inside me. Her first name ends in a soft A, like massage, like adore, like ally. My first OBGYN had a last name that ended in a Y, like a question, so he should have been able to listen. As if his name wasn't a trick, as if his name was a soothing why, as if his name didn't shout, he. His misdiagnosis should have resulted in my death. That's not cancer, that's a clogged milk duct. As if the body could not build twins and also try to demolish the mother. My period took off on vacation, I tell Elena. She laughs and jokes back while her finger circles my cervix. Where did it go? She asks, paying attention. To myself, I answer. I hid it, like treasure, like gold, like toilet paper, like yeast, flour. But to her I say, down to Savannah, on the vacation my husband and I booked but had to cancel. No one told my period. She's been gone for months. In a preteen memory of my mother, she chooses sanitary pads from a grocery store shelf. The box is illustrated with a painting of a woman wearing a baby doll dress, skipping at the edge of the ocean like no woman in history wearing a wad between her legs, even if it is labeled stay free. As if being a woman has ever been free. At the height of the pandemic, there are plenty of tampons, Super Plus, Super, and Regular. For some reason, there are no options with Super Plus and Regular in the same box. If I was Super Plus for 7 days, I'd be in the hospital, a word that contains spit, so no wonder no one wants to be there. I hold in my abdomen. I leave without buying, as if I am storing up the blood so I won't need a transfusion if or when the time comes. As if I am storing up the blood to donate to my children, the state, the entire world. At the end of June, the moment Connecticut's governor, who has a last name ending in a T, like the tents he had set up in Hartford Hospital parking lots, says, restrictions are being lifted, gently. I will be in the city's Elizabeth Park, in the middle of the rosebuds, bleeding right through my pants, oblivious, under the arbors, taking selfies, blooming. Returning to my car, I will find that I am saturated to my thighs. Turning the key, the gas gauge reads hard E, like female, like scream, like money. I'll wrap myself in the towel I use to protect the car's upholstery from my dog's wet body after hikes by the stream, pumping gas with my lower half covered in a print of mama and baby goldfish. On store shelves, there is Charmin and Fleischmann's and King Arthur, neatly restocked after the shortage. Everyone in the grocery is calm, in straight lines, properly masked, 6 feet apart, while my body spirals down into cramps. I will place 2 boxes of the dwindling supply of tampons in my cart when what I want to do is load box after box after box into my arms, catapult over the checkout, and steal out the store's sliding doors. But that's next month. Right now, Elena palpates, navigates. I'm leaning back like I just mowed the lawn, enjoying a nap in a hammock. But I'm busy writing inside my rawness, memorizing this moment of being heard. She's reading me like my uterus is braille, a word that focuses on feeling, a word that ends with a listening E, like the one at the end of her last name, like the one at the end of my first, like the one at the end of circle, like the one at the beginning of earth.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Christine. Okay, our next reader is James Finnega. James has published poems in several high-profile journals, and notably in anthologies such as Good Poems in American Places, edited by Garrison Keillor. He posts aphoristic Ars Poetica on the blog Ursbrush. I hope I pronounced that correctly. James? No, James? Oh, I'm sorry. All the people on my list were checked off as being here. Very much apologize about that. Okay, then our next reader is Victoria Bucheron. She's a writer and translator who hails from Ecuador and resides in Connecticut. She received an MFA in creative writing from Fairfield University. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Lost Balloon and other literary magazines. Her debut memoir and essays, A Body Across Two Hemispheres, is the 2021 Fairfield Book Prize Award winner. Victoria.
Okay, so this is, can everyone hear me? Here we go. So this is Intersection. It's an essay. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But yeah, here we go. Intersection. I'm by the building that once housed a Lord & Taylor, which is now empty of the only moisturizer my skin tolerates, and that prized cherry lipstick that leaves no stain. A store open for almost 200 years. Now the edifice seems like an ode to a just-gone era of capitalism. Time undoing an entity that existed when my great-grandparents lived, but not one that would outlive me. All I can think about is the peculiarity of what used to stand and what I would purchase, and the place I'm receiving the shock that will lead to eventual collective resurgence. An azure cashmere sweater worn twice that creatures destroyed, a black-on-black tuxedo jacket with a notched lapel and silver cuffs for our wedding night, fox leather knee-high boots that strained my toes when I had no car, not realizing the pressure would squeeze my nails until black and then loose. Then just skin, no sheet of keratin for months. This is what swirls in my head as I wait in the driver's seat, mask on, during an April that clings to rough winds reminiscent of January, an instant away from receiving the first COVID-19 vaccine. The only vaccine I've actually wanted to get since I was a teen heading to the Amazon. That one-time pinch was for yellow fever, since I would be exposing myself to thirsty mosquitoes. This time, it's the first of 2 shots to halt a worldwide pandemic. In the days leading up to Christmas 2020, just a few weeks before the building shuttered its doors, I entered the store to see if the discounts were worth it. No open fitting rooms, a mask mandate, and few heels left in my size 6 feet. Most of the gifts under the tree were bought during that outing. Peel-off gooey face masks, a teal cashmere sweater, Clinique goodies, light pink ballerina flats, and a chestnut-colored choker. As I tried on a pair of heels in the store for the last time, I remembered my mother taking me there as a kid. I'd bring a toy and watch her as she ignored my heavy sides. At least at the mall, Barbies and boxes entertained me while she shopped, or window shopped, but at Lord & Taylor, there was nothing. This is how it was until I got older. Then I'd go alone after work, finally understanding why my mother ventured there, but I could only afford purchases during the Labor Day sale. Sometimes I would go just to pass the time, spritzing on some perfume that lacked a flowery scent. I'd linger to the men's cologne section to inhale the smell of wood, almost alcohol, or the musk of rain on sand. I didn't need to buy anything. I just needed to be there, and to not think of anything but what was in front of me. As a child, this place inhabited nothing of interest to me, but as a young adult, it was an escape. Then, in the midst of profound change and seclusion, it became a void. I pictured the inside only holding abundant grime, a mound of dust bunnies, or maybe abandoned mannequins. In the parking lot, none of us leave our vehicles to head inside the building. No standing in line under bright lights, no last-minute trinkets to compel us into adding more bucks to our total price. The people making sure we get what we need are wearing military camouflage coats and pants, double masks, and some of them have beanies on to warm their ears. I take a photo of the building's exterior, the black font and semi-script logo still present, and wonder if getting a vaccine where a store once stood is really as much of a contradiction as it initially seemed. It dawns on me that this nation has too often conflated essential services with entrepreneurship. A free vaccine is only temporary, enough to restart the economy and to bring us back to when people would comfortably cough into hands instead of elbows. We are all there not just to revive the monotony of our lives, but with the hope to soon fill up the spaces we've abandoned. Malls, mom and pop shops, movie theaters, or fitting rooms. A Lord and Taylor that has felt the wrath of all the stages of the pandemic is the perfect place then to get vaccinated. I accept the experience can serve as an urban dictionary definition for America. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I had the readers in the wrong order, so I apologize for that. Our next reader is going to be Our next reader is Jahaniri Coleman. Jahaniri is an 8th grade student. She wrote the poem included in this anthology for a contest when she attended Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts Magnet Middle School. It was inspired by a scene from the Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. Jahaniri, welcome.
Hi, my name is Jahaniri Coleman, and my poem is called I Say Pick a Side. Females are too sensitive, they say. Females know how to keep it real, they say. Females talk a lot, they say. But then again, females are too aggressive, they say. Females are fake, they say. Females are too quiet, they say. It never ends. Pick a side, I say, pick a side. There are too many rules for us to abide. Anything we do or say is always taken in the wrong way. Anything we say or do is always a problem in the world's view. We fix our hair, we fix our clothes, we paint our fingers and our toes. Some even contour their nose, but still don't reach the standard. Some put on makeup after a breakup or just to dress up and press up, but then we're hiding our natural face, right? Rated 1 out of 10, lowering our confidence, and then we are labeled by these crazy things we call men. You can't wear too much makeup, but then again, you can't leave the house without it, no joy. You can't show too much skin or wear clothes that are too tight, but then again, you can't be fully covered or you look like a boy. Pick a side, I say, pick a side. The world is male dominated. We're hated, rated, and weighted. Females have to achieve something to be respected. Why can't we support each other and be a collective? It's hard enough to be a female, not to mention a black one. Let's try to support each other and be united as one. Stereotype, a word that isn't worth all the hype. Some may be false, some may be true, but everything is different in someone else's shoes. So try looking through our point of view. Pick a side, I say, pick a side.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay. For our next reading, we have Benjamin Grossberg. And I'm happy to tell you that Benjamin, about an hour ago, just won the Connecticut Book Award. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, congratulations. In addition to that, Benjamin's books include My Husband Would, a forward Indies Book of the Year, and Sweet Four Orchard, winner of the Lambda Literary Award. He is Director of Creative Writing at University of Hartford.
I'm going to read a poem called The Arrogances. I had the arrogance of takes no pills. I had all the arrogances. The arrogance of waiting for better, of refusing to explain, of no gray in my beard after 40 and none on my chest, which I flaunted on various apps. I do not mention the arrogance of regular dentistry and a reliable car, but I had those too. I never had that of height or I can beat you up. useful both for erotic and commercial applications. But I still found ways to get along, mostly by staying in corners and wearing boots. Death's arrogance flummoxed me, its supercilious refusal of even the most supplicant address. My mother, for example, when my father drives up to her grave, conveniently located at the end of a row. Does the nearby tree explain her flutter? Not every plot has one. In winter, he parks beneath it, engine on, heat going, staying as long as he can take it. My arrogance on the phone as he tells me this manifests in platitudes. I won't get started on the arrogance of platitudes, enough to say that I was full of it, like stones in my pocket weighing me into a lake. But other arrogances buoyed me, especially looks good for his age, which, in my arrogance, I took as an insult. Also, hope as expectation and saying hell no to the obvious. But pills every morning, that should have been my first clue, and increasing blotchiness of face, and that rafter of men not texting back. One by one, the departing arrogances, little ballerinas twirling off stage, each in a puffed-out skirt. The arrogance of consciousness may well be the last to go, the final ballerina pirouetting away. And look, her slippers hung loose.
Thank you, Benjamin, and congratulations again. Okay, our next reader is Kenneth DiMaggio. No, Kenneth DiMaggio? I'm sorry? Okay. All right. I thought he was here. I don't know. Is he in the wrong, Okay. Thank you. You made a good joke. Okay, then our next reader will be Amanda Harris Morgan. Amanda's first book, Stroller, An Examination of Cultural Attitudes Towards Parenting and Young Children, is forthcoming in Bloomsbury's Object Lesson series in 2022. Some of her other essays have appeared in The Rumpus, The Plowshares, and Blog. She's also written pieces for JSTOR Daily, The Washington Post, Real Simple, Women's Running, and ESPNW. Welcome.
Thanks. It's been wonderful to hear everyone's writing. Thanks. I'm really feeling grateful to be a part of this. I'm going to be part of my essay that's in this anthology. Deep in the woods of northwest Connecticut, just off where the Appalachian Trail briefly cuts through the state, are the ruins of what was once called Dudleytown. The mythology of Dudleytown is outsized and hard to distinguish from the facts about a settlement that really did once exist on this rocky section of wooded land near Cornwall. Crops never grew either because of the angle of the hills and subsequent limited hours of daylight or because of nefarious forces. The land has been uninhabited since the early years of the 20th century, either because it is inhospitable or because it is haunted. Visitors are unwelcome, either because the ruins are on private land or because of secret occult rituals happening there. Blurring the lines between these two would-be distinct options are some strange facts. For example, the land is owned by a private organization, and that organization is called the Dark Entry Forest Association. The first time I tried to go to Dudleytown, my friend Stephanie's GPS malfunctioned and sent us driving in circles in the foothills of the Berkshires. The area is remote. Certainly cell service must not be strong there. In the weeks leading up to Halloween, no trespassing signs line the roads in proximity to any trail visitors might use to hike. But the spring day I visited Dudleytown was beautiful and sunny. We parked in the proper parking lot and did our trespassing only at the very end, when we veered right just over a stream to walk about 200 meters off trail. Sunlight filtered through new leaves and birds chirped. I dread they wouldn't, that Dudleytown is eerily quiet, in stark contrast with the lively woods that surround it. The foundation of homes, the town's church and school, old stone walls are all still visible if you look carefully, but it's startling how quickly nature has reclaimed the area. 100 years doesn't seem long enough to make a stone-built town nearly undetectable. I'm sure Dudleytown or any Connecticut trail would feel different at 4 o'clock on a late autumn afternoon, the sun red and dropping below the horizon already, but on this spring day it felt peaceful and interesting and storied, not haunted. I looked at the stone foundations and willed them into a place of archetypal loss and sorrow, but truthfully I brought that to the forest myself. In the darkness of Dudleytown's legend, the curious ghost hunters, teenagers, and believers in hauntedness it draws are separate from whatever darkness may belong to the lives that unfolded on that land. Last spring, I went to hear a local artist, Mary Ellen Hendricks, talk about her Thin Places project. She had asked friends and strangers to name a place where the distance between the spiritual and physical world feels thin, and then photographed those places and printed them on silk. Before beginning a slideshow of her photographs, she passed out little cards for us to record our own thin places. The first image she projected was taken in the same place I'd written on my card. I'd seen the orchard for the first time on a beautiful March day, tree frogs chirping, unseasonable spring-like warmth in what was still New England winter. Although I visited the orchard with a friend, I felt profoundly lonely that day, that month, that year. Those moments, though, in the orchard felt bright and haunted, but a bright, open, sunny haunted. I don't remember if my friend told me what he knew of the orchard's history or if I pieced it together later from online searches, just like the road with the abandoned tennis court, nothing dark or even remarkable, just an old orchard that was now part of a multi-town land preserve. Hendricks never used the word haunted, and I know that in Celtic theology, thin places are locations of proximity to God, to good, which feels quite different from haunting. But the lines between my haunted valley roads, abandoned tennis courts, that frightening road in West Virginia, and thin places are blurry. Dudleytown did not feel thin, though maybe in some ways its visitors, with their rituals and fear, might create a different sort of opening there. Maybe all haunted places are thin, but not all thin places are haunted. There is darkness even in the divine, the spiritual, but not all spirituality is dark. Summer turned to fall, and where we live in New England, the woods really do look enchanted for a few weeks every year. One late October weekend, while Dark Entry Road must have been carefully patrolled, my kids and I were driving through a nor'easter on winding country highways to a farm where they'd be attending a birthday party. Just after Simon fell asleep in his car seat, Thea looked out from the back seat at houses built before the Revolutionary War, past roads with names like Gallows Hill and Musket Ridge. There were no other cars on the road when she asked, "Is this a secret place?" I think she meant a thin place. He was awed, not scared, and I knew she meant the road, narrow, winding, dark, lightly traveled, but I also felt something else in her question. Is there a secret in this darkness? I also heard, or imagined I did, the relief of seeing something familiar that until just that moment had been outside the grasp of memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't help but think that the timing is very good this time of year, right? Excellent. Thank you. All right. All right. Our next reader will be Amy L Nachten. Amy lives in Storrs, Connecticut with her family. She teaches high school Spanish and English composition at the University of Connecticut. She's been published in several journals, including Poetry Island Review and through Connecticut Writing Project at the University of Connecticut. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
So I have a poem for you this evening. This poem is dedicated to my father, who died from early onset Alzheimer's in 2019. My father was a very literary person. He adored stories and reading and writing, and he would frequently record different quotes or sayings that he had captured from the pages he'd read in his diary. I inherited that diary, and in looking through it, was picking out pieces or lines from it and starting to create work from those. So the work that this comes from is from a work called Love Lies Bleeding by Don DeLillo. And the name of the poem is, "The pages are so beautiful, we touch them twice." When the sky has lost more buttons and Basil scents the summer air, we will remember the snow on a Portland street in August, and its models cloaked in winter whites, a haunting holiday recollection, unexpected. It's the end. In the end, it's not what kind of man he was, but simply that he's gone. The stark fact. Snow fell once in August on a Main street, while in another state our father slept a forgotten hospice slumber blanketed in cold, conditioned air light. The highway overpassers' arrows had shown us the way, all points to Maine, as we navigated the unfamiliar narrow dark. Later, after his passage, the pages are so beautiful, we touch them twice. Work over the air held by each word, each pause, each breath. Contained in his diary were the dog-eared books, where we magnify still the magnificent, where love lies sleeping. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. What a beautiful tribute to your father. Okay, who's up next? Christopher Deropio? Yes, you are here. Okay. Welcome. Come on up. Okay. Christopher is the author of 2 collections of short stories and 2 novels, most recently, The Soul Hunters. His fiction has appeared in Plowshares and a number of other literary publications. He lives with his wife and son in Willimantic and teaches at Eastern Connecticut State University. Okay. All right.
Whoops. Read a little bit of my story called When It's You. Wes Funderburk needs to shut up. Like now. He sits directly across the table from Angie, talking about the stock market, his face freshly shaved and splotchy pink, a Band-Aid on his bald dome where they recently scraped off what might yet turn out to be a cancerous mole. But it won't be. In the past 2.5 years, Wes Funderburk has had, from top to bottom, multiple melanomas, a double bypass with 2 stents, gallstones removed, blood clots clipped off in his legs, and surgery for severe Morton's neuroma in his foot. Yet here he is, having just devoured his ossobuco and awaiting a slice of red velvet cake. He claims the cake is for him and his wife, Carol, to share, but Carol will sip her coffee, oblivious, while Wes eats the whole thing alone with a shot of Sambuca. When the check is placed on the table, each couple will toss in some cash or a credit card, presumably splitting the bill 4 ways. But Angie didn't order dessert, and while everyone else ordered cocktails and bottles of wine, she didn't have anything to drink
either, just water, an appetizer for her entree. No way she spent $20 in total. The other 3 couples are probably pushing $100 each. She shouldn't have to split the bill. If Jim were here, he'd handle it. She wouldn't know how much they've spent, and she wouldn't care, though she and Jim would talk and laugh about the silly injustice of it all on the drive home. You'd think someone would say, hey, the DePaulis didn't have any wine. Maybe they shouldn't have to pay as much, wouldn't you? But oh well, what are you going to do? These were their friends. They'd known each other forever. Angie and Jim had always enjoyed their company and looked forward to their evenings out with them. Now, though, no. Angie does not look forward to evenings with these people. She feels bad about this fact, a little guilty, but everything is different now. She accepts their invitations because the dinners give her something to do, an excuse to get out of the house, an event to look forward to, words and times to scribble on her calendar, because the alternative, being home after the sun goes down, just herself and the dog, is unbearable. Her running joke is, don't invite me to something just to be nice, because I will accept. Everyone always laughs at this. But seriously, why should she have to pay the same amount as the Funderburks? She won't say anything, of course. She'll keep smiling, keep laughing, and then she'll be annoyed for the next few days. Or someone will suggest Angie not pay at all. The others will get it for her. This happens occasionally, which, while very sweet of them, makes her feel even worse. Her decaf tea arrives, just to give her something to do with her hands. The other couples are the Troutmans and the Dolans. Angie doesn't know the Dolans very well. They're friends of friends. There's a real possibility that Angie will never see them again. The restaurant itself, chosen this week by Wes, is low-ceilinged and dark-paneled. There are no windows visible from their round table in the corner of the room. Strings of white lights are tacked up along the molding, illuminating framed portraits of strangers from other eras. It's a table for 8. The chair to Angie's left is unoccupied. The food was pretty good, Angie must admit, though she isn't sure she'd come back. I'm thinking about jamming some dough into Kevin's bar or whatever it is, Wes is saying now, his armpits strained against his sport coat. Gotta be a tax write-off if nothing else, right? So, okay, he's moved on from the stock market to taxes and their son's fancy new business venture, an establishment in Middletown that brews its own beer and serves small, overpriced plates prepared by some up-and-coming chef from the city. Gastropub, Angie thinks is the word for it. The Funderburks scoff when they talk about it, as if it's all just some frivolous side hustle the son will outgrow before he moves on to his real career as a hedge fund manager. She hasn't been there yet, but Angie knows the place is doing well. It's been written up in Connecticut Magazine's New and Noteworthy column and is getting a ton of word of mouth all over social media. Angie has no idea where the kid got the money to open the place. Well, okay, not true. Of course she knows where he got the money. From his parents, or his grandparents. Maybe both. Whenever Kevin Funderburk and his entrepreneurial adventures arise in conversation, Angie feels a clenching inside, a kind of soul nausea. She hates that the Funderburks have the means to set their son up with his own hip, fun, publicly successful business, and she doesn't. She hates that the Funderburks have at least one kid who has stayed in Connecticut, who they see on weekends and holidays and for grandkids' birthday parties, or even just dinner on a Wednesday. And in her darkest, most shamefully hidden moments, she hates that Wes Funderburk, with his enormous belly and chronic hypertension and mysterious polyps, is still alive, while Jim, seemingly healthy as a horse for 70 years, is not. Thanks.
Thank you, Christopher. I think we can all relate to pieces of that, don't you think? Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Our next reader is Crystal Mayo. Crystal is a writer, actress, and mentor for Girls Right Now.
Her memoirs, Teaching You a Lesson, The
Evolution of Hip-Hop, Mother to Son, Remembering Ma B, and numerous others have been published in African Voices, Our Stories, The Bronx Memoir Project, Volume 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to share with you an excerpt from Wicked Blues. There is no life here. No scent of jasmine nor the smell of God's breath right after a rainstorm. No flashes of light capturing moments nor laughter that crescendos out into the hallways. There is only a stranger lying between starched white sheets, her eyes searching upward towards Savannah light she will never see again. I have stood over her bed 1,000,000 times. I know her face, each feature a snapshot in my mind. The way her lips part when she finally surrenders to deep slumber. The way her eyelids slightly rustle like soft wind as the first rays of dawn yawn across her face. She was my mother, and every nuance of her face belonged to me. Grandma Ojo always joked that my daddy spit my older sister Yara right out of him. When I was little, I thought that saying was nasty, because can't no beauty brew inside the phlegm of a grown man's spit. But as my sister got older, what my grandma said was true. Grandma Ojo told us stories of the younger version of Daddy courting Mama, how when Mama opened the door, Daddy stood with lanky legs in the frame, ooh, looking like a tall glass of water. His ripples made Mama's friends swoon, but his name was written all over her. Yara inherited his etched cheekbones, silky dark hair, and legs dipped in molasses. When she walked into a room with her brazen curves, the boys who used to chase us around the corners till their armpits left an odor of sour onions swooned. Grandma Ojo warned Yara not to fool around with those ripe-for-picking boys, but her name was written all over them. I wasn't tall or a rippling glass of water. My face belonged to Mama, and I prayed I would grow up into her rare, eclectic beauty. In family photographs, she never sat in the center because she always sat quietly in the background until your eyes noticed hers. And when they did, she was breathtaking. Her pecan tan skin was canvas for her freckles, which scattered across her face just right. Folks say the life of the house is in the kitchen, but in ours it was in Mama's bedroom. On cool summer days, I'd sit on the floor by the edge of her bed with crossed legs and the shea butter jar between my thighs. While she greased my roots, I pulled out old family photo albums. I appointed myself the griot in the family, listening as I turned the pages and Mama shared each detail of the branches that made our family tree. Daddy got his height from great-granddaddy Cyrus, a soldier who fought in World War II, and great-grandma Lucinda, Grandma Ojo's mama, was a midwife and herbal doctor. Back then, black folks couldn't get their foot into the medical school, so she healed our own people in the comfort of their homes. Expectant mothers drank boiled green Spanish moss tea for an easier childbirth, and elders suffering from swellings and joint pain got relief from a rubbing of cayenne pepper and aloe juice. Daddy knew the first time he had fallen in love with Mama was when the sunlight danced across her face under a cherry tree. And when they married, he built our house from the ground, brick by brick, so that he knew it would have a solid foundation. Although they shared the bedroom, he built it just for her. He painted the ceiling blue and added a skylight so that each time she woke, he could see morning light dance across her face. Every day the sun shone, it would remind him of why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. Well, he never told me that, but since I was the family griot, that
is the way I'm going to tell it.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely reading. Very nice. Okay.
So next will be Samantha Schwind. Samantha?
Samantha is a freelance writer and proofreader based in Connecticut. She studied professional writing and psychology at Southern Connecticut State University, as well as publishing and digital media at New York University. Her poetry has appeared on the New York Times Learning blog. Thank you, Samantha.
I hope you like sad love poems. This is Love Letter from the Houseplant to the Tea Kettle. They told me that I was meant for a life in the shade, a seat by the clearest window, and that you would just hang me up to leave me high and dry. They said I was too young, far too green for love, and that you would just burn up the seeds of my blossoming potential. They told me I would always be turning toward your chromium charm just to hear you whistle after some porcelain model, and that you were filled with far too much hot air for someone as calm, cool, and collected as me. They told me you were nothing more than a dream, insubstantial as steam. But I know you. I've seen you, and I have a feeling deep in my roots about you. I have seen past your shiny stainless steel armor, and I have felt your calm inner warmth. I will let you make tea and cool down with me in peace whenever you please. If loving you means getting steamy, bring on the fire. I will leave this windowsill behind in pursuit of desire. I'm accustomed to weekly waterings, but with you, I'll take whatever you're willing to give. And I know we live in different worlds and we're both always really busy, but in my dreams, when we face each other, it is so bright that I always wake up feeling like sunlight. So maybe one day, you'll leave your fiery hotspot to come join me by the window. And when the rosy glow of dawn casts shadows behind us and promise ahead, we will turn to face each other in the light of the new world, and our reflection will be always you. Thank you.
There's so many wonderful stories and poems tonight. I'm very excited to be here with all of you.
It's really wonderful. Okay. Mackenzie Hurlburt. Hi, Mackenzie. Here. I thought I had these all in order. That must to be. All right. So.
Dramatic pause.
Yes. Mackenzie is a short fiction writer with previous publications in Written Tales, Horror, Flash Fiction Magazine, and others. Her story Milk Teeth received an honorable mention in the 2019 Writer's Digest Popular Fiction Awards. She studied at Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven, Connecticut, and is a proud member of the Northern Connecticut Writers' Workshop. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I am super grateful to be here. I'm going to read the first few pages of my story, Milk Teeth. Okay. So, after losing her daughter in the gray days of April, Edith Thompson took to gardening. For those first few weeks after the wake and funeral, where a half-size casket cradled her child, after the heavy scented flowers disintegrated into piles of crunchy petals and rigid stalks, Edith reached into the earth. While her husband Ned sat at the kitchen table eating a casserole from a well-meaning neighbor, Edith wandered to her backyard and sifted through the dirt. She bought seeds, tomato, watermelon, pepper, poppy, that rattled in their paper packets. Edith placed each one gently in finger-deep divots, and in June, after no green tips emerged from the soil, she purchased a tray of zucchini and cucumber sprouts and planted them one by one along the garden's edge. "Edith, honey, they're too close," Ned said when he found her one morning, kneeling in the dark soil. She sat back on her heels, a wandering hand past her cheek, leaving a streak of dirt. "They'll cross-pollinate. You'll have a bunch of mutant squash cucumbers trying to take over the world." Ned bugged out his eyes like he once did for their daughter Allie when he was telling a scary story. Edith shrugged. Once placed, she patted soil around their bases, tucking them in with a concentrated effort. Within 2 weeks, the sprouts' leaves turned a toxic yellow. Each night after dinner, Edith watched their wasted forms from the window over the sink while Ned packed up the leftovers. He tried to help. When Edith left to go to what she would only refer to as the doctors, he'd run the hose and soak the soil, hoping for some hint of green. These doctor visits were getting more and more frequent, and though Edith didn't say much, Ned hoped they were appointments with a therapist in town. Edith had stopped eating, rejected his affections, and refused to say Allie's name. The vibrant, playful woman he married lived limp and deflated, a glove without a hand. It was during one of Edith's appointments when Ned found the teeth. They'd been stored in the top drawer of the kitchen island, wrapped in a thin sandwich bag cinched shut with one of Allie's butterfly-baubled hair ties. He undid the tie and poured the 3 milk teeth into his palm. Their jagged bottoms had once been tucked beneath his daughter's gums, sharp as a broken bottle. He couldn't believe how light they were, and fragile. He thought of her small white hand in his. Alone in the kitchen, Ned let out a breath and felt his throat tighten. Closing his eyes, Ned clasped the teeth in his fist. He couldn't remember the sound of his daughter's voice. The truth of it pierced him. He slammed his fist on the counter and felt the teeth bite into the flesh of his palm. Collapsing on the kitchen floor, he leaned up against the bottom cabinets and cried into the crook of his arm. He wrote out the flow of grief as he always did, expelling it in these moments of privacy. When it had passed, Ned wiped the tears from his cheeks with his knuckles and focused on his breathing. His fist ached, and when he unfurled his fingers, he could see the teeth had broken the skin. They were tinged pink with blood. He whispered Allie's name to them. He felt the air electrify. He remembered her giggling in the grass outside. In fact, he could almost hear it. His breath caught. Then the neighbor started his lawnmower.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Check the list. Jason Kortmach is next. Jason. Jason is assistant professor in residence in English, affiliate faculty in teacher education, director of the Connecticut Writing Project, and assistant coordinator of Early College Experience English at UConn. Recent publications have appeared in English Journal, Connecticut Literary Anthology, and a sizable list of highly regarded journals. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Ben, I wanted to congratulate you on the Connecticut Book Award for Poetry. I was one of the fiction judges, and we were listening, my wife Amy and I were listening on the drive over, so it's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. And I'm glad you got the memo on the dress code, jeans and a pullover, right? I mean, nobody else got the memo. Okay. Really nice to be here with everybody. Nice to see so many friends and colleagues and fellow writers. Ken in the back having a drink. Hi, Ken. So this is part of a larger eclectic project with lots of fits and starts, trying to write a memoir about my father, who died about 7 years ago. To say the least, we had a complicated relationship. So I knew a girl in college named Green, a wonderful painter and beautiful. Her paintings were abstract, full of colors and shapes, like a Kandinsky, but with softer, fuller lines. She used to destroy most of her work before anyone saw it. I fantasized about sleeping with her. I wanted her to paint something for me so incomplete in its ability to convey the emotions of our intimacy that she destroyed it at once. I knew a boy at UConn who grew up in Mansfield. I've forgotten his name. He went to school with us, but as a hometown boy, he lived with his mother. We called him late one night to invite ourselves to his home. We were fascinated by him. He was solitary, unknowable. There were wondrous depths to him we wanted to explore. His mother answered our call. She was friendly, but reluctant to invite us over. He, too, was hesitant on the phone. He warned us his room was small, an attic. When we arrived, we were ushered into a close-ceilinged space filled everywhere with piles of books and magazines and boxes full of rocks and shells and feathers. It was as if he had never in his life discarded anything, and his old mother, out of love and desperate acceptance, had consigned him in his awful accumulation of life's things to her attic. I thought of T.S. Eliot shoring up fragments against the ruins. As an undergraduate, I would smoke pot in the gray mornings of winter before walking to class across the old part of UConn, through the early morning fog that rolled off the lake and past the bare trees and across the open field that today has sidewalk and lights. I loved the old brick buildings and the towering oak and the pine trees. It was easy to lose myself in time and imagine I were walking across campus in a previous century. I would experience an odd nostalgia for the present, as writer Paul Auster calls it, that enabled me to appreciate the present moment more by looking at it as if it were the past, as if the very moment I lived in was a memory, and I could be comforted the only way memory can, by the familiarity of the scene. Years later, after I had a son and my father had disappeared, I would experience a different kind of nostalgia in which I would see my childhood self in my son and wanted to weep for the boy I was. Lonely, almost fatherless, peripatetic. When my son became old enough, he would ask me while lying in bed at night to tell him stories of my childhood, and I realized that most of my memories were sad, or from my teens and 20s when I lived an outrageous life that strove to banish the memories of my sadness and anger, but I could not tell those stories to him yet. Instead, I offered him the handful of happy memories I had of eating a hot dog with my father outside the Peabody Museum, of seeing a fish jump out of Lake Whitney as my father and I rode our bikes across the causeway, of ice skating on Holland Pond near my grandparents' cottage. For years, my wife and I have taken in strays. High school and college students, children left afloat as we had been by absent parents in difficult circumstances. Over the years, the web of our intimate relationships grew. The notion of family, of what it means to love or be in love, expanded and defined by empathy rather than blood. Many years ago, we were invited to the first wedding of a former student. I was asked to stand in for her father and give a reading at the ceremony and a toast at the reception. We've been to the weddings of several other students since then, all former strays. Relationship after relationship, I find myself inserted into the fatherless lives of these students, enacting part of the father I never really had. Almost 30 years of teaching, I have watched them become adults, marry, and begin their careers, many choosing to be an English teacher like me. And just this past year, one had a baby, another has begun law school, a third is trying to recreate her life in the ashes of her failed marriage, a fourth confronts the likelihood that she will have to do the same. These former students, now friends, meet me for coffee, a drink. Some write to me late at night seeking advice or just a friendly note, friendly voice. As Hemingway writes, it is awfully easy to be hard-boiled about everything in the daytime, but at night, it's another thing. I seek solace in a late-night glass of wine, in a book, in the woods around my house, in the things that grow in the gardens of my yard. Do the demons ever leave? Or do they merely recede? I remind myself that our fate is only the story we craft. Death is the mother of beauty, said Wallace Stevens. Daily, I resurrect memory, crafting identity by choosing what to suppress and what to preserve.
Wow, at long last, and that it seems like it went by so fast. We're to our last but not least reader, and that is B. Fulton Jennis. B. Fulton Jennis is the Poet Laureate of Ridgefield, Connecticut. Her poems have or will appear in the 2020 Connecticut Literary Anthology. I don't know why it says 2020. That might have been a misprint. Comstock Review, Tupelo Quarterly, and many others. In 2021, her poem, From the Room of an Unknown Girl, was awarded the Leslie McGrath Prize. Blinded Birds, a chapbook, will be published in the spring of 2022. Welcome.
Hi, thanks everyone for hanging in here. I know it's been long and I'm a poet, so it's short. The name of the poem is called In the Time of Sonic Booms, and for those of you too young to remember sonic booms, it's an enormous sound created when an aircraft exceeds the speed of sound, which is about 750 miles per hour. The Concorde jet could do twice that, but planes are no longer allowed to break the sound barrier over land. They have to be over the ocean. But when I was a kid, we got to experience these enormous booms, and that's where the title of the poem comes from. It's the first poem in a collection I'm working on about my childhood. And that sounds really boring, but I came from a really weird neighborhood, so anyway. In the time of sonic booms. Maybe we were running toward trees across a field strewn with sunlight. Maybe we were worming through culverts, digging a dog's grave, biking with no hands on the grips. Maybe we were watching the flight of a baseball, a bird, a father's hand. Maybe we saw the steely glint in the sky before our chests became hollow drums, struck by sound, louder than sound, sound that was fist, bat, bludgeon, sound felt more than heard. Maybe it was more than a hole ripped in the sky by a machine practicing menace, learning to drop bombs dumbly like a deer that shits while it walks. Maybe it was just us, imagining a God even angrier than the one who once hung his own son on a tree, who was eager now to show us his face, who knew exactly where we lived. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing collection of work that's just been done by people in this room. It's just been so exciting to listen to the people reading it from their heart. Beautiful, beautiful work. I think I speak on everyone's behalf that we'll all walk away a little more excited and a little more inspired. Thank you so much.